If you go on YouTube and type in Demarcus Cousins, you'll find endless highlights of him dominating the NBA. I mean, you can see him playing like Shaq with his back to the basket and absolutely bullying grown men. You can see him running in transition like a prime LeBron James and posterizing players. Heck, you can even see him playing like Kevin Durant and making that game-winning mid-range. But yet, despite being just 32 years old and healthy, Demarcus Cousins, aka Boogie, who's a former perennial All-Star, All-NBA player, and at one point the best center in the NBA, isn't starting for any teams. Heck, he's not even on any benches. Ladies and gentlemen, what in the world happened to Demarcus Cousins? Back when he was still in high school, Boogie was one of the top basketball prospects in America. He was rated as the best player in the country by ESPN and Rivals, and as you can see, when he wasn't number one, he was number two. He went on to play a year in Kentucky before ultimately declaring for the 2010 NBA draft, where he was selected 5th overall by the Sacramento Kings. Right from the get-go, everyone knew he'd be special. His combination of size and strength was something that doesn't come around too often. I mean, 6'11" and weighing in at 292 pounds, but yet he was so agile, so skillful, and so dominant. As the years went on, you could see that he was becoming a menace. I mean, he already passed the eye test since day one, but his numbers were also trending in the right direction. The first 5 years of his career shows it. Whether you want to talk about points, rebounds, or field goal percentage, everything was looking good. Unfortunately, however, despite how good Demarcus was, the Kings weren't winning many games and didn't make any playoff appearances. Then, to make things worse, he didn't exactly have the best relationship with his coaches, especially George Karl. The volatility between the two led to suspensions, verbal spats, and at one point, Karl even tried to secretly get Demarcus traded. Still though, despite all that drama, no one at the time could ignore Cousins. I mean, he was becoming an automatic 25-10 type of guy who couldn't be guarded in one-on-one situations. And on top of that, in 2016, he started shooting the three ball. It was unheard of at the time, but in the span of 2 years, he went from shooting 0.1 three-point shots a game to 5. I remember looking at box scores during those times and was absolutely shocked to see Boogie making like 3, 4, and even 5 trays in a single game. One could arguably say that he was the godfather of modern big men like Joel Embiid and Nikola Jokic. You know, forces of nature who could dominate the paint and stretch the floor. Unfortunately for Demarcus, however, he was very hot-tempered, and this was detrimental to his game and team success. Some quick examples of things he did was punching Patrick Beverley in the stomach, verbal abuses towards officials, detrimental conducts to the Kings, verbal tirades against reporters, and making inappropriate statements while being ejected from games. All of this led to fines against Cousins, but even worse, it added a bad stigma to his name. The Kings owner eventually got sick of this behavior, wanted him out of the organization, and said this in a statement: "It was time for a change, and I decided this was the best direction for the organization. Winning begins with culture, and character matters." And just like that, the best center in the game at the time was traded to the New Orleans Pelicans, where he was to team up with the best power forward in the game, Anthony Davis. This was the first time Demarcus was on a team that had another star power, and although many people thought he'd butt heads and make a negative impact with the Pelicans, he didn't. They went from 10th in the conference with 34 wins to 6th with 48 wins. And along the way, he showed the NBA world just how much of a beast he really was. I mean, a 55-point, 14-rebound game against the Trailblazers, a 44-point, 23-rebound, 10-assist triple-double against the Bulls. Sheesh! There was no question Demarcus Cousins was the best big man in the game by a wide margin and was on pace to getting one heck of a bag. But then, unfortunately, in his contract year back in 2018, he sustained an Achilles injury, and this was when things started to go south for Boogie Cousins. He was set to sign a near $200 million max contract, which would have paid him $30 million a year. But the Achilles injury took the offer off the table, and instead, he signed a 1-year, $5 million deal with the Warriors. Now, when he finally recovered from his Achilles, he wasn't bad for Golden State. Not at all. I mean, on his Warriors debut, where he only saw 15 minutes of court action, the big man logged in 14 points, 6 rebounds, while shooting 3 for 4 from beyond the arc. Then from there, it wasn't too much longer until he started looking like his former self, which includes a 28-point, 13-rebound performance against a young Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray. Unfortunately for Demarcus, however, Lady Luck was not on his side, because as soon as he was starting to get his rhythm back, he suffered another setback. In Game 2 of the first-round series in 2019, Cousins suffered a left quad muscle injury. Now, he did recover and played again in the finals, but he didn't quite have the impact that he would have had he been able to stay healthy. And sadly, this was where once the best center in the league turned into a journeyman. He went and signed a year with the Lakers, then the Rockets, then the Clippers, then the Bucks, then the Nuggets. Some may say he was washed at this point, but the truth is, even a washed Boogie was still a force to be reckoned with. I mean, in the 2022 postseason where Denver matched up with the Warriors in the first round, Boogie was a big problem for Steph Curry and the crew. The Game 5 performance he had against the Warriors was all that was needed to see that he was still a serviceable center in the league. You see, in just 15 minutes of action coming off the bench, the former All-Star center went off for 19 points, 3 rebounds, while shooting 8 for 12 from the field and 2 for 3 from beyond the arc. He was 31 at this point, and although he had his fair share of injuries and wasn't a starting caliber center anymore, there was no doubt that he could still give teams a productive 15-20 minutes a night coming off the bench. And that's where we are today. After seeing the way he came off the bench for the Nuggets, especially in the postseason, I thought for sure Demarcus would find another spot on at least a bench. I mean, he's not asking for a lot of money anymore, he's not causing any locker room problems, and as far as I can see, he can help teams win. But as the days and weeks went by, there were no calls from any teams. No teams in the league wanted the center who, just a few years ago, was logging in 50-point games and triple-doubles. Puzzled by all of this, Demarcus Cousins went to the Warriors general manager to ask why nobody wants him. And here's what GM Bob Myers said on the matter.
Demarcus called me a month ago, and he said, why am I not in the NBA? And I said, you want that answer? He's like, yeah. I said, because people are afraid of how you're going to act.
Then, in an interview between Kevin Garnett and Steven Jackson, here's what Jackson said when KD posed the question of why aren't people like Demarcus in the league anymore?
These guys play the game with a certain passion and a certain way that they don't want in the NBA no more.
So ultimately, that's a huge reason why Cousins isn't on an NBA team today. Because although he isn't the hot-tempered player he was during his younger years, his reputation still lingers with him, and that's something teams don't want to gamble on. Another huge reason why teams don't want to gamble on him now is because of their timelines and because of the increased talent level in the league. I mean, if you're a younger team that's in a rebuilding phase, you wouldn't want a 32-year-old center who has a history of injuries because you're not trying to win now anyways. You're trying to just build for the future. Then, if you're a true contender, the list of centers who could stretch the floor, attack the paint, and play defense has really increased. I mean, aside from Embiid and Jokic, there's now Jared Jackson Jr., Brook Lopez, Al Horford, Naz Reid, Jonas Valanciunas, and the list goes on. I ain't saying that any of these B-level centers are better than Demarcus per se, but the truth is there's a lot more versatile centers today than there were about 5 years ago. So as a result, Demarcus doesn't have an NBA job today. It's insane to think that the best center in the league just a few short years ago doesn't have a job in the NBA. That just goes to show how truly talented the league is currently. Anyway, Boogie is still trying to get back into the league currently, and just recently to showcase his talent to the world, he actually signed with a team in Puerto Rico to show the world what he can still do, because even as of today, he believes that talent-wise, he's the third best center in the league.